Hey, Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7. So we're in episode number 1586, and I'm here to answer the question for you. Is the Boba Fett film really dead? And the answer is maybe a little more complicated than the yes or no. So let me just give you the quick background and refresher for this. So the Boba Fett movie was supposed to be announced, teased, if you will, at Star Wars Celebration Anaheim in April of 2015. They were going to talk about it along with Rogue One at the Future Filmmakers panel on the Sunday of the Celebration event. Unfortunately, Josh Trank was reported initially as having fallen ill, and that was the explanation that was given for why he did not appear at the panel. But later on, we all found out that there was trouble in paradise on the set of the Fantastic Four movie that Josh Trank was involved in, and that may or may not have played a role in his ultimate dismissal or removal, or pick a word that you want to use, because we don't necessarily know the whole story, obviously, but ultimately he was no longer associated with the Boba Fett project as well. And so that project was stewing for a while, and there was a rumor kicking around that James Mangold, who has done some fantabulous work with Wolverine movies, was attached to revive the project, but unfortunately, that no longer seems to be the case. There's a film journalist guy by the name of Eric Weber who was attending a Black Panther screening in October. I know it seems strange for a Black Panther screening, but it was an Oscar-related thing apparently, so that's why. I mean, shouldn't have seen it in February, but just kidding. Anyway, so Kathleen Kennedy was at this premiere also, or at this screening, and apparently she talked to this guy, Eric Weber, and he asked her about the Boba Fett movie, and she said, yeah, we're not doing it anymore. And so he tweeted out that the Boba Fett movie is 100% dead, and that Lucasfilm is 100% focused on The Mandalorian. Now, a bunch of news outlets, of course, saw that and were like, wait a minute, what is going on? And so they checked with their own sources and found out that, at least for now, the Boba Fett movie, which, was never officially announced to begin with, is not in active production. Does that mean that it won't ever be produced? Well, no, it does not mean that at all. For the moment, all we know is that it is not in quote-unquote active development, but the fact is that, Boba Fett movie is something that has been asked for by fans, and if Lucasfilm is paying attention to what fans are asking for as part of their slate, not that that should be the be-all, end-all, because you know how that goes. Sometimes fans say, yeah, we want this, yeah, we want that, and when it's actually given to them, they're like, I don't know about that, so it doesn't always work out very well. And that's not just related to Star Wars. That could be Star Trek, that could be Marvel, DC, any fandom you want to name, stuff like that happens. So not an active development just means that it's sitting on the shelf and they have other projects that they are prioritizing, which in this case would be Rian Johnson's trilogy and the Benioff and Weiss series, and also let's not forget Indiana Jones 5, that's in the works as well. And there's others too, and we'll talk about that on tomorrow's episode. And that's all to, say nothing about any television stuff like The Mandalorian or Star Wars Resistance or any other projects they might have on the agenda. Clone Wars Saved also, and they're not ramped up in the same way that Marvel Studios is. They don't have the same huge sprawling infrastructure that Marvel Studios does, and so they're not going to be able to have as many things in active development as, say, Marvel is by comparison, just using Marvel because, of course, they are both Disney-owned companies. And speaking of that whole bandwidth thing and about not having necessarily the infrastructure to support the level of development that, say, Marvel Studios is able to do, anybody who wants to jump on the spin-off movies are dead bandwagon, well, it doesn't quite work that way, basically, because again, if Lucasfilm doesn't have the infrastructure to support multiple movies a year, then just based on the commitments they've made, standalone movies are going to be, off by the wayside for a while. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're killing the idea of standalone movies. It's just that what they've committed to with Benioff and Weiss and with Rian Johnson means that, they have bitten off as much as they are going to be able to chew for the next, 6 years at least. And so standalone movies, unless Lucasfilm ramps up its infrastructure to some degree, standalone movies, we probably won't be seeing any of them for a while. But Anthony Breznican over on Entertainment Weekly did actually have a little bit of a hint about what the Boba Fett standalone movie might have been about, or at least might have included, that it might have been focused on the bounty hunters that we saw in the scene in The Empire Strikes Back, where they were all made famous for us. That would, of course, be Bosk and Dengar and 4LOM and Zuckuss and IG-88, in addition to Boba Fett. So that kind of rogues gallery, of course, makes for a very exciting concept, to be sure. And hey, who knows? Maybe it'll turn out that all those bounty hunters are going to be in the Benioff and Weiss movie. I mean, wouldn't that be something? I know some people are also saying, give us an Old Republic movie for Benioff and Weiss. We have no idea what it is that they are going to do. And so, heck, bounty hunters could be involved in that for all we know. It just depends on what they want to do with that series, and we're not going to know what they're going to do with that series for a while now, because they're still wrapping up all the work on Game of Thrones, the final season, and so forth. So basically, I guess you could say the Boba Fett movie is the film development equivalent of Boba Fett himself in the Sarlacc pit, presumed dead, but not necessarily so. And that is going to do it for today's episode. Hope you will consider subscribing to the show wherever you happen to be catching it, so that way you'll have all the episodes delivered to you lickety-split when they are released every single darn day. And because this is a daily enterprise, I hope you'll consider supporting it at patreon.com/SW7X7. For now, though, it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining me for this episode, as always. And may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
This podcast is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2018 Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.